What's going on, everybody? Orel Moody here, and I am excited to share with you the most important lessons I have learned being a 3 times TEDx speaker. Let's jump on in. Now, one of the things that's really fascinating about the TED stage and about speaking at the TED stage is that even though I've spoken at the White House, and even though I've given over 1,000 professional speaking engagements, 48 states, 5 countries, and I've done it over and over and over again for decades, the TED speech is like the biggest thing. And I'm fortunate that I'm part of a smaller group of individuals that not only has delivered a TEDx speech, but I've also given 3 of them. Now, if you know anything about TED, you know how powerful that platform is. When you can get on that TED stage and you can put together a really good presentation, it literally has the ability to change your career. There's people like Simon Sinek, who had a really grainy, old school TED talk, but was so powerful with his Start With Why idea that launched his whole career. And Brene Brown launched her whole career through this initial jump point of the TEDx stage. Now, I remember when I was doing my first presentation, I was wildly nervous about it, okay? I didn't know I was gonna give 3 TEDx talks in a very short period of time, but it became something that I wanted to do really well because I put a lot of pressure on myself. Now, I want to share with you the biggest lessons I learned from that first one, which probably only got like a couple of thousand views, to my third one, which was wildly impactful. Hundreds of thousands of people have seen it, and it's actually been really, really great for my business and personal brand. I want to tell you about why the first one kind of didn't work versus the third one working. So let's find out what the difference was. Okay, so the first thing that I would encourage you to understand that I didn't fully grasp with my very, very, very first TED Talk is this idea, okay? You are not speaking, okay, to the audience. All right, I'm just gonna put not audience. So this is what's fascinating. Most speaking engagements that you will give, there is an audience in the room, right? If you're doing a live in-person presentation versus, say, a virtual one. Now, most things that work in person don't actually translate well if you're doing them virtually or on video, or more appropriately, for a recorded video. So here's what that means. I could spend, say, 15 minutes in a normal keynote just warming up my audience, telling funny stories and doing crowd interactions to get them engaged and connected to me, and then I can spend 45 minutes giving really, really good content, right? As an example. The TEDx stage, you don't have that luxury. One, it's a short period of time, typically under 18 minutes, right, for most cases. And if you spend time warming up the audience, that audience may love it and think it was the greatest presentation, but for the person at home watching it, it's not really the same experience. So the first thing I want you to get is what works in the real world doesn't work in the TEDx world. And when I say the real world, I mean in person. Because if it is too involved and engaging, you're gonna have people do call-in responses and have people write things down and do all these interactions, the person at home isn't gonna have the same experience watching it. So the first thing to understand is that your audience is actually the people watching your presentation on YouTube typically, or the TEDx website, but usually YouTube. It's the people watching it on YouTube. Those are your actual people that you're speaking to. The people in the room hopefully will get a great message, of course, because you have an idea worth spreading. But the truth is, you're really doing it for the hopefully thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that can view it. So the first thing to get is that what works in person doesn't necessarily work virtually, right? Now, this is the other thing. When I did my very, very first TED presentation, we had, coaches and people to help, and I was kind of in a unique space where I wasn't someone who just had an idea and I wanted to share it. I was someone who's been speaking professionally for a very, very long time. So I listened to a lot of the coaches that were, hired, and they're fine people and, great people. But a lot of the advice that I was being given really, I thought I didn't think it actually was the right advice. Now, again, I was coming from a unique perspective that I've been doing this. I understand what works. So I decided to say, I'm just gonna believe them, and these are the professionals, they do the TEDx stuff, so I'm just gonna go ahead and listen to them. This was the very first presentation, so I just listened to them. Whatever they said, I was like, okay, I'll do it your way. And unfortunately, I don't think it actually came out as good as it could. You know, I probably, that first video probably has like 3,000 views or something like that, which again, 3,000, you know, so people that I got to impact, which is great. But, you know, I was hoping for a bigger splash. The second thing, and I'll tell you why, before I move on to the next thing with that, the reason why I felt like the stuff they weren't working is because I felt like they wanted me to follow a very specific formula. And the formula they wanted me to follow felt uncomfortable for the way I like to speak, the way I like to put together presentations based on my experience. But they were saying, no, trust us, this is what works. And ultimately, I think that that's really not how a TEDx presentation goes. I think there's elements of it that for sure you can replicate. But what happens is, what you don't want to do, and this is a big mistake for a lot of people when they do a TEDx talk, they become a diet version of themselves, okay? This is what happened to me within my first one. I became a diet version of myself. So instead of being the original me, the original Coca-Cola, I was the diet cola of myself. And what happened is I was listening to their feedback on structure. I was watching, 75, different TEDx talk, the top 100 TEDx talks to try to figure out what they all have in common. And then what happened is instead of going up there and being myself and going up there and doing what I thought was the right way to put together and share it, I was putting together, trying to kind of fit my round peg into their square hole, and it didn't work. And at best, I kind of felt like the presentation was good, but ultimately it was just a diet version of myself. It wasn't, I would rather have been authentic and be me and failed than to try to be this particular kind of speaker. They're very big in not moving at all. Well, at least the advice they gave me, not moving at all, and start this way and make sure you say these things. I just disagreed with it. So one of the things I'll tell you for you, without getting into all the details, because everyone has a unique situation with a story they might want to share on the TEDx stage, is simply don't watch 75 TEDx videos or listen to some coach that's going to make you sound like everyone else. Because if you sound like everyone else, then you're just adding to the noise. You're not actually separating yourself from it. So I encourage you to, one, learn how to own your authentic and unique message, okay? Now, when I moved on to my second presentation, my second TEDx talk, which I was really excited about because I felt like the first one was okay. It wasn't my best work in the world. I mean, I still thought the message was sound. Honestly, it's one of the things I'm personally very, very proud of, But I was just sharing it with the intent of saying like, well, I hope this catches on. I hope this goes well, right? I didn't know what I wanted from the first one. And the first one, to be very honest with you, wasn't really connected to any major goal outside of the honor and privilege of being able to speak to a TEDx stage. So the third lesson that I learned that was really, really big, and I'm gonna change the color on this one because it's that important to me, is this. Think beyond views. This is big. This is super big. Now, a lot of people, their only testament to their TEDx experience is how many views did my video get? Now, if that is your sole goal, I just want to get 4 million views, you can do that. There's lots of people who've gotten 4 million views on their TEDx talks, and you know what? Nothing has changed. Nothing. Nothing has changed in their life, except now they can brag about the vanity metric that they had 4 million views. But you know what? 4 million views, it ain't on your YouTube channel, it's on the TEDx channel. So it's not like you getting any of that ad revenue, first of all. It's not like you're growing your particular business because you're just getting views, right? So you want to get clear, what is your goal beyond views? This is really important, but I don't want it to get muddied. I'm not saying that you have to turn this into a sales presentation. That would be disgusting. I'm not saying you should turn this into some type of self-promotional thing. That would be disgusting. It is about your audience. It's about, sharing really important ideas that you believe that when people learn, their life will be better. That is the primary goal of the TEDx talk, okay? And, not but or however, but and you want to think about how you can leverage that video to create something of benefit for your brand, for your business, so that you can impact more people. This is really important. My first TEDx talk, I've never had anyone message me and tell me they watched it. I never had anyone tell me that it was particularly life-changing. I never got any business from it. I've never been invited to speak because of it. I was able to put in my bio, which, yit to D, and that was really, really good. Honestly, it was really great for branding. I shouldn't lie, I can make fun of it, but ultimately nothing happened beyond a couple of views, okay? However, my second TEDx talk, I started thinking about, well, how do I want this overall message that I'm sharing that's important to people also to help my business beyond just being able to say I had views? So I was trying to think of, well, what branding did I want to create? And at the time I had a podcast called The Art of Likability, and I was talking about likability. And I was like, well, how great would it be for me to kind of launch this brand that I'm having along with my podcast with this TEDx talk, and using that as a way to gain credibility in this new space that I was speaking into, which was more of the corporate and business world. And it's like, well, why should I get more speaking engagements in that world? Well, I'm the guy who gave the TEDx talk on it. And that actually was pretty good. That was really helpful. And I started, getting some speaking opportunities from it. And that one got way more views. I think probably, I don't know, maybe 50,000 or so, or 40,000 so views, something like that. So it was a big jump from 3,000 to 50,000. I was really, really happy about it. But when you think about TEDx talks, you want to reach a lot of people. And you're like, all right, well, I started building my brand, which was helpful. And I used that to leverage getting credibility to get speaking engagements, which is, something that I'm really passionate about. But then there was my third talk, and this one was totally different. The third talk, okay, I was able to really, really hit home, and really it was my most successful one so far. And I'll tell you why it was. The third TEDx talk that I did, I allowed myself the permission to be myself at a very deep level. Now, before you go, that's not really good advice, Arel. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Ha ha, Jar Jar Binks, right? I think Jar Jar Binks is actually a controversial character, so I'm sorry if that offended anybody, because I remember a friend of mine who liked Star Wars says Jar Jar Binks wasn't necessarily universally loved. But I brought that up anyway. In the TEDx talk, I decided to be myself, and here's what I did in that talk that was significantly different than my first two. And the results were pretty exciting. I had hundreds of thousands of views on the third one. I've gotten more speaking engagements that I can count. I've gotten messages from people all over the country saying that they show my video in their classroom for their students, and that it's one of the most powerful things that they've seen. And if you go into the comment section, you see these incredible comments and all of these things. And it was like, it's hard to put into words when you really find your authentic self. But I want to tell you a quick story that led me to really own myself on that stage, okay? And I'm gonna write the word 10 foot, okay? Now, a friend of mine who played professional basketball overseas, I think it's a quote from a movie, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm gonna attribute it to my friend because he told me. He said, so he played basketball, and he said, when he was playing basketball, he'd get super nervous about certain big games, but then he remembered this idea that no matter where you play the game of basketball or who you play that game of basketball with, the hoop is always 10 feet tall. Certain things don't change. Now, you may be playing against different competition, you may be playing in different countries, you may be playing in different leagues or whatever, but that hoop, that hoop is 10 feet, and you've been working on that 10-foot hoop for a really long time. So instead of trying to fit other goals, and instead of trying to just build my brand, when I say other goals, I mean like speaking the way other people wanted me to speak. And instead of focusing solely on building my own brand, okay, I was like, let me go back to what I know how to do, the thing that I've been doing for years, the thing that I'm caring about, the thing that I'm passionate about. So I put together a message about what I call the secret to student success. And this is an idea that's really important to me. I've taught it all over the country. And I put together a really cool presentation, but I said, I'm gonna be me in this presentation. And again, I had hundreds and probably, at that time, thousands of at-bats to find out what my personality type was, to figure out who is the authentic Aurel on stage. I was way more fun, I was way more relaxed, I was way more energetic, and I was tying it into something that was beyond views. So it was something that I knew, if used correctly, would be used in classrooms, in schools, in colleges, and high schools all over the country. And if they saw that, they would naturally want to buy my books and book me to speak. So I was thinking beyond views. And I wasn't being a diet version of myself. I was really being my authentic version of myself. And finally, I was realizing that, yes, I'm speaking to the audience at home, but I need to make sure that my connection is not something I'm trying to push. It's something that I just believe is there. And this is important. I want to spend a moment on this. A lot of times what speakers do is they try to, talk in a certain way and move in a certain way and try to be this mechanical expectation. But what I found is that when you're connecting because you're supposed to connect with me because I'm your friend and I love you. I didn't look at the audience the way I did in my first two, like they were adversaries that I had to overcome. I had to kind of I'm gonna conquer this stage. I'm gonna overcome my audience with my skill set, knowledge, and ability, and then they're gonna be forced to listen to me. I didn't come with that approach. I came with the approach that everyone watching is my friend. We're already friends. And I got this really cool secret that I wanna share with you that I think is really gonna help your life because I'm your buddy and I love you and I care about you. So my attitude wasn't trying to impress people, just to grow my business. I had all that element there, but what the main thing is I stayed within my lane. The hoop is 10 feet. Sharing ideas and messages, that's 10 feet, like a basketball hoop. So that actually caused me to relax into the presentation and give something that I truly felt was a piece of art, a piece of love that I could give to the world. And it got me a lot of business. And it helped share a message I cared about. And it was something that to this day is probably one of the most talked about pieces of content that I have out there on the internet in terms of clients that choose to work with me and people who email me who I've never met before, outside of people who've actually seen me speak in person. So what I would encourage you to do is if you want to speak and if you want to truly create a TED-style presentation, the biggest things I can share with you are these simple 4 ideas. Understand that your audience is out there, right, on YouTube watching, not the people in person. Don't follow a particular script so you become a diet version of other people, right? Think beyond the views, but ultimately, remember that no matter where you play basketball, the hoop is 10 feet. So if you're quirky, be quirky. If you're goofy, be goofy. There's a reason they chose you to speak on that TEDx stage. So don't remove yourself from being the exact person that they wanted you to be, and that's why they chose you. So your messaging and how you say it, of course, is gonna be super important, but who you are as you're saying it is as important. It's super deep and super powerful.
Hey, if you like that video, make sure you hit that like button before you go and hit the subscribe button so you can get more of our great content so it goes to the top of the algorithm. And if you head over to Talkadot.com, not only will you get more in-depth resources there to help you with your speaking, but also you'll be able to get a free account for our amazing software tool that helps speakers like you pull leads from your speaking engagements, get data so you can actually have objectifiable information on why you're so good at what you do and how to use that data to book more speaking engagements. If you want to find out what Talkadot is, head over to Talkadot.com. And remember, if you want to talk a lot, head over to Talkadot. See what I did there? Just go to the website. Trust me, it'll make more sense when you're there. I'll see you at the next video.